Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the Armanino video series, Opening the Black Box of PPP. Today, we're going to focus on those Paycheck Protection Program loans that are called first draw loans, and specifically the new first draw loans that are available for borrowers to take out if they qualify. My name is John Sweisberger. I'm the partner in charge of Armanino's business outsourcing services practice, and I'm joined again today by Jen McCabe, my partner in the BOS practice. Jen and I have been living the PPP dream for months and months now, and we're excited to be able to share with you some of the details inside these new first draw loans. So Jen, why don't you take us away on these new first draw loans and kind of tell us about what's new.
Okay, so again, remember first draw means these are loans for people who never had a PPP loan before. This is not the second draw. These are for first-time borrowers. And what's nice is that they have opened this up to a few more nonprofits, specifically housing co-ops, 501c6 organizations, and destination marketing organizations, specifically because they're hard hit, obviously. We can now use the money for more things. So we are adding to payroll, rent, and utilities. And now key suppliers who you have had a long-term relationship with, this can't be a new relationship, but if it's a key supplier that you always have used, you can add that. You can add operations expense that is critical to your operation, that you can prove that it's a long-term kind of deal for you. And now the other thing is, if you had to buy protective equipment, COVID-related masks, for example, or if you suffered property damage because of rioting or marches, glass breaking, those things can also be included. And they're adding 3 new certifications that can't be included. So we just went over this in our last webinar at the end. Anybody who gets a shuttered venue grant cannot do these new loans. Publicly traded entities are banned from these new loans. And I love this one. If there's a federal executive who controls this entity, it's not eligible for a PPP loan.
Got it. All right. So that's what's new. And those certifications, you have to actually initial the certification on the application, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's talk about what's changed from the original go around between April and August of 2020 and what's new now on these first draw loans. So start with, let's make sure you're using the proper loan application form. It is a different form now. It's got these new certifications. It's going to ask a few other questions that it didn't ask the first time around. So don't use the form that was issued, reissued, and reissued again between April and June last year. Use the form. It's on the treasury.gov website, and it's also on the SBA website, and it was dated January 8th of 2021. That's the loan application you want to be sure to use for this. The other thing that's been a big change is originally the economic injury disaster loans, or EIDLs as they're known, that people were able to get up to $10,000 in it as an advance, and it was being netted against the loan amount. So if you had an EIDL loan with a $10,000 advance and say it was a $100,000 loan, that $100,000 was getting netted against your PPP amount to reduce the amount that you could borrow through the PPP program. That's no longer the case. If you qualified for $500,000 before and you qualify for $500,000 now, before you would have only gotten 400, but now you can get the full 500. So that's a big change for people. And then the third part of what's changed, because they had to add this into the certification, it seems a little self-evident, but nonetheless, it is a little bit different in the application form, is a certification that you have not permanently closed the business for which you're trying to get a loan to support. So you can't say I've shut down and, oh, now I've got this money, I'm going to try to reopen again. Okay. Jen, what about everything else that's still the same?
Right. To calculate the amount that you borrow, you still multiply your average monthly payroll costs by 2.5 times for 2019 although I think we can do that for 2020 as well.
Not on the first draw loans, only on
Nope,
the
you
second
still
draw
have to use in
loans.
2019. Okay,
That's
that's a good
correct.
one. For our listeners, that's a really important clarification point. The 500 employee limit is still there if this is your first loan. You
Right.
can still have up to 500 noses, and we are saying you need to count noses. You need to count the number of bodies in motion. So full-time and part-time each count as one person. You still have a $100,000 cap on the wages that you are allowed to use in the math for calculating your loan and also for forgiveness later. The authorized uses are still primarily the things that you just can't live without in your business. And of course, payroll is the number one thing. You still have to, if you want full forgiveness, you still want to target at least 60% of the money for payroll.
That's correct.
Right? Rent,
Mhm.
utilities, and mortgage interest are still there. You still must have been in business before February 15th, 2020. They don't intend this money to help you start a brand new business. It is still a 1% interest loan with a 5-year term. I think, John, can you help me on this? I think that it was a 2-year loan and that now they've expanded it to 5 years.
Yeah, the loans that were issued prior to the Flexibility Act, which came out on June 6th of 2020, all those original loans were at a 2-year term. The Flex Act changed the subsequent loans to 5-year terms and gave people the opportunity to have a conversation with their lender to change an existing 2-year note to 5 years. But since June 6th of last year, all PPP loans and all that will be issued this year are under this 5-year term.
Yeah, it's a fantastic deal, actually, 1% for 5 years.
Cheapest money you'll get.
That's right. And so there are the first loans that went out were 2-year loans. So as a point of clarity here, the 5-year term was there. It is the same, sort of. It was there, but the first loans really came out were 2-year loans, and not very many lenders were changing them to 5 years in the early points in time last year. And then we still have affiliation rules, which means that if you are a person or an entity that owns several companies and you control them all, you are considered one borrower. That's the way to simply think about it. Each of your entities is not an individual entity if they share common management and control.
Right. And that starts to factor in up against that 500 employee limit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. One thing we want to make sure that we're absolutely crystal clear on, if you had a PPP loan in 2020, you do not qualify to take out a new first draw, as they're called, loans. You have to evaluate your eligibility for a second draw loan if you're in that situation. If you did not take out a loan on the PPP program in 2020, this page is for you. But don't get confused around the employee limits and the multiple. What you see here on the slide, 500 employee limit, with the exception of those new nonprofits and destination marketing organizations Jen started with. 500 employees is the limit for these new first draw loans, and there is no 3.5 times multiplier for the NICS 72 codes, the hospitality industrial codes. It's 2.5 for everybody on the new first draw loans if you did not get one last year.
Right. And when we talk to people about these, John, it's usually people who missed out the first time. Their bank shut the portal and they just missed out, and they're looking for a second chance at this.
Exactly. So hope that helps everybody understand what's what with the first draw loans. We can certainly help you through both the loan application and the forgiveness application preparation process. We do all the work for you once you send us the reports. We couldn't make it easier for you to just stay focused on your business. If you're interested in learning more about that, visit the webpage that you see here on the right-hand side, learn.armaninollp.com/SBA. And of course, at any time, you can visit our searchable FAQ library with literally hundreds and hundreds of questions at the web address that you see in the lower right corner. That'll do it for this installment of our PPP Black Box video series. Thank you very much, Jen, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Have a wonderful day.